Hey everyone, this is Gleb, and imagine I have an application which uses console.log to output messages into the browser's DevTools console. And usually it outputs standard messages like started, doing operation, and so on. But once in a while it can output something that has an error. Now it's not using console error, which it should probably, but the text of a message contains the word error. And we want to detect those messages and fail the test if the console log has been called with some argument that contains the word error. So right now we have started and all good. We can control in my example when the random error is displayed by changing this little constant. So if we see something with an error, we want to fail the test. I'll do it in two ways. The first way that I'll show is we're going to spy on all console log calls, and then at the end of the test, we'll check all the calls made, and we'll check all the arguments. To set up a spy on the console log, we have to get it first. So we're going to get the application window. Its console will give us an object. So then we have a console. Now we can spy on the console object and its method log, and we can give it an alias so it can find it later. Now our application will output the first message 100 milliseconds after the fact, then it can take some other delay before the next message and so on. So we want to make sure that the test spends enough time for the console log to be called. So in my example, I'll just wait 1 second. That's the simplest thing. So now notice that we are seeing those console log calls made by the application. We can see them even in the spies and stub table. Now all we need to do is check those calls. We can get the spy by using the alias that we assign to it. And we're interested in getting all the calls. So we can say invoke get calls, which is a standard Synon method that if you have a spy or stub instance, you can get all the calls. Now this actually gives you an array of calls. So I can dump it into the DevTools so I can see all of them. And you can see right here. The most interesting thing is the args array. That's the argument to each individual call. Now, side then, if it returns undefined and console table does return undefined, doesn't change the current subject, so we're still working with a list of calls. And if we have an array as current subject, we can use sci each and get the call as an argument. So now we get going through each element in this calls array. We can get its argument, right, by using calls args, which is an array again. And we can look at each argument and say expect arg to not contain the word error. And we probably should convert it to a string just to be sure that it's a string, because it could be a number and so on. And now notice at the end of a test, when we're going through the calls made, we find that random error message and we fail the test. Okay, so this is the first approach. Spy, record all the calls at the end of a test or after each test, get those calls and going through each one and go through each argument and check the text. But we can also do it in an alternate way. Instead of waiting until the end of a test, right here, we can stop the console log and let the call happen. But if we look at the arguments, we can fail the test right then, instead of waiting till the end of the test. Here's how we can do it. Instead of spy, we can stop console log method. We can use calls fake, and now we get all the arguments. We can inspect each argument just like we did right here. Let me just copy paste it right here. And if everything is okay, if there are no errors, then we can call the original wrapped method. That's what Synon does. When you stub it, it has a reference to the original function, and we can call it with the arguments that we got. Okay, and then we can remove all this. Okay, let's see if this works. Yeah, it accidentally put parentheses around the wrong thing. Okay, and now notice, as soon as that console log is called with random error, our callback catches that and throws an error, failing the test right then. And if we have no errors right here, then each call is inspected and looks good and is allowed to actually happen. So these are two ways for checking how the console log was called by the application call and failing the test if the application calls it with an error. This example comes from my Cypress example site that I will link in the description of this video.